Every year, there are dozens of Christmas specials about various characters that save Christmas. The elf that saved Christmas, the dog that saved Christmas, the gift that saved Christmas, the man, the toy, the Grinch, and so on. This year, it's my turn to save Christmas. Although I keep wondering why Christmas is always in need of saving. Maybe one day we'll get a self rescuing Christmas. But for now, it's my turn. Let's have a chat. Hello and welcome. Thank you so much for joining me, and especially to my patrons and channel members. You might recall that last December I made a video about how when you mesh together the biblical accounts of the Christmas story in Matthew and Luke, Mark and John omit this story, the holy couple seems to have trouble remembering where they live. In that video, I covered only some of the problems of trying to hold both accounts inerrant. This year, I have a gift to believers, a way to believe both accounts as completely true events and make them fit with Roman history. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
First, let's look at the problems. If you want both accounts to be true, let's start with Luke. Luke has Mary and Joseph living in Nazareth and needing to travel to Bethlehem for the blessed event. A decree goes out about a census where people need to travel to their ancestral homes to register, so Joseph takes his very pregnant wife Mary on the 4-day journey. Assuming a traveling pace of 2.5 miles an hour for 8 hours a day, this journey takes about 4 days. Why he even takes Mary on this ridiculous journey is never explained. They arrive in Bethlehem. There is no room for them, so they stay in a stable. 8 days later, according to the Luke account, they take Jesus to Jerusalem for his dedication at the temple. This is only a 5-mile hike, so it can be easily done in a couple of hours if you didn't just give birth and have a crying baby to carry. But even with these conditions, they can still make it in a day. Now they are a bit closer to home, and we would expect that they would now return to Nazareth. This is what the Luke account tells us happened. But clearly, if both accounts are to be true, there is a time gap here of at least 3 years. But really what they do is return to Bethlehem to finish all the things that the Matthew author has them doing. Never mind that this makes no sense for them to return to a town that had no room for them, not to mention that this is the wrong way to go if they want to return home, as nevertheless they do just that for no apparent reason. Upon their return to Bethlehem, they remain a couple of years and are visited by the Magi. Herod conducts the slaughter of the innocents, but Joseph is warned in a dream to flee Egypt, which he does, remaining there until he gets word that Herod is dead. The journey to Egypt is about 40 miles long, a 2-day journey. How long they remain there before Herod dies is unclear. Since Herod died in 4 BCE and Jesus is at least 2 years old now, Jesus had to be born no later than 6 BCE. We are told nothing about their time in Egypt, how long they stayed, where they lived, what they did, nothing. Then they start heading back to Bethlehem. What is that all about? Did they forget they live in Nazareth? Whatever. They start heading for Bethlehem, but then they hear that Herod's son Archelaus is king. Fearing him, as he was an awful king, they did get this tidbit of history right. They head for Nazareth, which, according to Matthew, at least implied, is them finding a new place to flee to. What's up with them need to flee anyway? Does baby Jesus not have a guardian angel? Is God not able to keep Jesus safe? He needs to rely on humans to do it for him? Not surprising, since he seems to not be able to do anything without human help. It can't now be any later than 6 CE, as Herod Archelaus reigned from Herod's death in 4 CE until 6 CE. Caesar Augustus replaces Archelaus with Quirinius, who rules both Syria and Judea, following a revolt and annexation of Judea by Rome. Archelaus was such a poor ruler that both the people of Syria and Judea appealed to Caesar for a new one. So Mary and Joseph are finally in Nazareth, where Jesus is supposed to grow up. But I'm sure you saw the historical problems as I gave you that tidbit of Roman history. Augustus annexed Judea in 6 CE. Until then, the ruler of Judea was a puppet king, but it was still a sovereign nation. My gift to you, dear believers, is to mesh both of these versions of Jesus' birth and the history of Rome in a way that is both possible, at least for God, and reasonable. Here we go. Mary and Joseph start out living in Bethlehem in 6 BCE. Mary gets pregnant while they are engaged, and Joseph is told in a dream by an angel to go ahead and marry Mary, as she is with child with God's son. She didn't cheat on him with another man, just with God. For those of you who claim that this was non consensual, the Bible actually does have Mary consent, which, according to Jewish law, would mean she committed adultery with God. You could make the argument that they didn't have sex, he just put the sperm inside her with no sex act. As if! Who can blame him? A God needs to get in his jollies once in a while, too. So Mary and Joseph remain engaged, not married, and she remains a virgin. Here's the part where the Catholics are closer to the truth. Joseph doesn't just have her remain a virgin until Jesus is born, but rather, she remains a virgin for about another 12 years. Maybe she was too busy to be bothered with sex. Anyway, then there's the star problem. Some versions say that there were magi from the east that saw the star rise in the east and they followed the star to find Jesus, which would have them traveling from the east and going east and somehow winding up west. Unless they circumnavigated the globe, this is impossible. But some versions of the Bible say the star rose. They do not say it was in the east. But those of you who have Bibles that say that it did, particularly you King James only people, here's the fix for you. There was a Magi convention in Egypt. 3 magi from the east were all at the convention, and a star appeared in the east. At least it was east as to the people in Bethlehem. They decide to follow the star, especially since they were going that way to go home anyway, and they travel west to go to Bethlehem. So now they are able to travel west to get to a star in the east. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Herod hears of their arrival and their quest, questions them feigning interest in worshiping this new king, then finds out Jesus is in Bethlehem from his own Bible scholars. Why he even bothered asking the Magi is one of those mysteries in the Bible. They hadn't finished following the star yet, as they hadn't found Jesus yet, and Herod tells them to let him know where Jesus is when they find him. They find him, give him their gifts, and leave, having been warned by an angel not to tell Herod. When Herod realizes he's been duped, that's when he asks the Bible scholars, who tell him that Jesus is in Bethlehem. There's no stable, no shepherds, no choir of angels in this birth story, just the Magi. Herod is determined to kill the baby and sends soldiers to slaughter all the baby boys in Bethlehem 2 years old and under. The soldiers come, but soon they discover that they can't tell the girls from the boys, with all of them wearing diapers, and they are confused as to who they are supposed to kill. They realize that they need to get all the diapers off of the babies, and while they are busy with this odorous task, Joseph is warned by an angel to flee with the child to Egypt, which he does. Mary, Joseph, and Jesus go to Egypt, and they wait for Herod to die. When they get word that Herod is dead, they head for home. Unfortunately, they discover that Herod Archelaus, son of Herod the Great, is now ruling and is just as problematic. So they decide to head to Nazareth in Galilee, outside of Herod's jurisdiction. Now we get to the major plot twist. You may have noticed that I haven't included any of the Luke account yet. That's because that was an entirely different event. Jesus was born twice. After the Holy Family arrives in Nazareth, God realizes he fucked up. Oops, this one's for believers. God realized a few prophecies were missed, so he needed a few mysterious events to get them done. Since Jesus is really a spirit and the body he's currently in is irrelevant, Jesus simply sheds his skin and returns to God briefly, and an angel announces to Mary that she is to bear the Son of God. Again. You can imagine her confusion. Luke 1:34 really leaves out a lot of the dialogue. Mary doesn't just say, "How can that be, for I am a virgin?" She asks, "How can that be, because I already did this 12 years ago?" Oh, And remember the part about Jesus' parents taking him to the temple and they can't find him? They left out that the reason was because he went back to heaven to be born again. You see, there's actually a huge gap in the story here as well, as some of the story is out of sequence. Jesus was born in about 6 BCE, and Quirinius becomes governor of Syria in 6 CE, 12 years later. So when the census is announced, God has everything in place to finish up the prophecies that he missed on the first go round. Remember the part where Jesus tells Nicodemus, "You must be born again"? That's because Jesus did it, and he assumed that it was just a normal thing. When Nicodemus asks, "How can a man enter into his mother's womb a second time?" there's an awkward pause there. I'm not sure if Jesus is trying to remember how he did it, or if he's just realizing now that crawling into his mother's vajayjay may not have been as innocent an act as he had thought, judging from Nicodemus's question. Granted, I'm speculating at this point and making up how it is that Jesus got back inside to be born again, but hey, why not? Apologists and Bible commentators do it all the time. Ask one how Jesus could have been born while Quirinius was governor of Syria and Herod was king of Judea, when not only were those events separated by 10 years, the rule of Archelaus, but also when Quirinius was governor, he was governor of Syria and Judea. There is no more king of Judea, as Judea was annexed at this time. Some apologists will tell you Roman historians just got the dates wrong. Herod didn't die until 1 BCE. But this still doesn't solve the problem. Most claim that Quirinius was governor twice, which is neither supported by Roman history nor is it possible. It's not possible, first, because Quirinius was putting down a revolt of the Homonadensians between 5 and 3 BCE. And then he became tutor to Augustus's grandson and heir, Gaius Caesar. But Gaius was killed in battle in 3 CE, and Tiberius replaced Gaius as heir apparent. Quirinius was then appointed governor of Syria. Archelaus had made a mess of Judea, so Augustus annexed the kingdom, appointing Quirinius as governor over it, as well as banishing Archelaus to Gaul. There is a grain of truth to the claim that Quirinius was governor twice, as he was. He just wasn't governor twice of the same region, to the dismay of the apologists. His first governorship was in Galatia and Pamphylgonia, an appointment that took place in 12 BCE prior to the uprising of the Homonadensians. I have found apologists that claim that Quirinius was ruling Syria in 5 BCE and commanding legions in Galatia simultaneously. This one from the website Spirited Nature is the best sounding one of the bunch, by an unnamed author that claims Quirinius was governor of Syria in BCE based on the Annals of Tacitus, which make no such claim. Rather, the author deduces the governorship given Quirinius would be in the region where the war broke out, and thus he would have been the one to quell the rebellion. The Homonadensians were from the region of the Taurus Mountains. This apologist claims, with no evidence, that the Romans had no legions in Pamphylia, Galatia, or Cilicia, and since the only other region touched by the Taurus Mountains is Syria, Quirinius must then have been governor of Syria. To reach this conclusion, one must ignore that Quirinius himself was a legate and had command of legions. Site after site all list Quirinius as governor of Galatia, not Syria, during this time frame. The apologists err in claiming that Quirinius was governor of Syria twice. Not only does it not fit with the historical record, it would be a serious violation of Roman practice. Roman emperors never appointed the same person to govern a certain province twice. They were too afraid of the power base that such a governor could garner. So now it's 6 CE and Mary is once again pregnant with Jesus. This is why she had to stay a virgin after Jesus was born the first time, because she had to do it all over again, and she needed to be a virgin for both births. Luke also mentions that she is pledged to Joseph, not married, so evidently they still aren't married yet. For some reason, Joseph again believes Mary's story that she didn't cheat on him, but rather is experiencing a second virgin birth. Joseph is probably so grief-stricken at the loss of the first Jesus that he hardly notices. Either that, or when Mary tells him that it's Jesus again, that Jesus is coming back, maybe he's so happy that he overlooked the pregnancy. It's now 6 CE, Quirinius is governor of Syria, and he conducts a census of the new province of Judea to determine how much tax Caesar can collect. Mary and Joseph have all the gold and frankincense that they got from the Magi, less what Joseph used to buy his carpentry shop, and they don't want to declare that and the carpentry shop for tax purposes. So they close up shop and head to Bethlehem. After all, they still have a house there, and they can register there with the poorer house and no carpentry shop to pay taxes on that they have here in Nazareth. The second birth is partly about tax evasion, because we all know from the lifestyles of certain pastors that tax evasion is a sin God is willing to overlook. So they head back to Bethlehem. Unfortunately, when they arrive, the house is gone. Make up your own reason why. Maybe it was destroyed, or maybe someone saw that it was abandoned and took it, or maybe it just fell into disrepair after the 12 years that they were gone. Either way, the house is gone and they have no place to stay. So they go to the inn and there is no room, so they end up in the stable. Mary is not happy. They have plenty of money that they could have used for a much nicer place, but Joseph insisted that they hide it all from the tax assessors, and they brought none of it with them. Thus, you get the lowly birth. What they don't tell us is that they were secretly rich. This time we get the choir of angels, the shepherds, and anything else that you may have in your nativity set, minus the Magi. Those came 12 years ago, and there is no star this time either. That was only in the Matthew account, not the Luke. What prophecy did they need to fulfill? They didn't call him Emmanuel the first time. They needed to call him Emmanuel. So they still name him Jesus, but Mary makes sure to call him Emmanuel.
Release us.
I hold your oath fulfilled. Go. Be at peace.
So she doesn't need to do this all again. Where in the text does it say that they did this? Nowhere. It's not in either gospel. Matthew says that it's a prophecy, but never mentions them actually doing this. Hey, it's a prophecy, and we have to fulfill the prophecy, so we can infer it. They called him Emmanuel. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Now, the couple take Jesus to the temple for dedication. That's another reason that they had to do it again. They never dedicated him the first time. They give the offering required of a poor person, even though they are rich, because they left all the money in Nazareth, and they have none of it with them. Not sure if this is a sin or not. I hope not, for their sakes. Now, after the dedication, they go home to Nazareth. 12 years later, they take him to the temple again, and again he disappears. You can just imagine Mary's panic as she is afraid she is going to have to do this all over again. And this time, she isn't even a virgin anymore. They're married now, and they have a couple of other kids. But fortunately, they travel back to the temple. Remember, they had traveled a day's journey before they noticed that Jesus was missing. And when they get back, they find him. Oh, what a relief. And there you have it, believers. Granny has saved Christmas. Both Gospels are absolutely true, and they fit into Roman history. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
Epilogue. Jesus then grows up, dies on the cross, gets buried, end of story. Hey, I said I was saving Christmas for you, not Easter. Live your life.
Are we there yet? No.
But you made it. Have a cookie.